Okay, here we are. This is where the meeting is taking place, the United Way office. Earlier, I think. Let's see what this is all about. The agenda.
I told you
I ran into you a lot, huh, Michael?
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Dolores Kias, and I'm the Executive Director of the Regional Task Force on the Homeless. The Regional Task Force on the Homeless will be assuming, or has kind of informally assumed, that role, and formally will be assuming that role in January. So we are, as you are, in transition, moving from kind of a volunteer-based continuum to a continuum that is of membership, governed by a charter, bylaws, and soon to have an infrastructure organization. So we're kind of in that in-between stage.
I'm the president and CEO of the San Diego Housing Commission. That works, that we run the affordable housing program for the city of San Diego. I've been here in San Diego a little over 8 years, although I've been in my industry 44 years, literally all over the country, beginning with my home state of North Carolina, which is why I sound this way. We've been here about 8 years, and what I like to say is nobody can replace Todd Gloria, but I'm following behind Todd as the next chair, current chair of the what I call the RC3. And as you all know, the RC3 has been going through a number of changes lately. A couple of them having to do with leadership on the executive committee. And Nick Mancione, who's been a constant continuing presence on that committee, was unable to be with us here today, but Susan Bauer, who you all know, is here in Nick's stead. And also we had Karen Braylene, who replaced Jennifer Lassar as secretary of the board about halfway through last year. Karen also could not be here with us today and sending her regrets. And Sister Ramunda, who you all, I'm sure everybody knows Sister Ramunda, she's retiring now this month. And she stood down as treasurer this summer, and Deacon Vargas was gracious enough to replace her. So the new leadership team, as of August, end of the August board meeting, was me as the new chair, Nick as the continuing vice chair, Karen as the continuing secretary, and Deacon Vargas as the new treasurer. And we're very, very pleased to be here with you in that role. There was nobody at the city sadder to see Todd Gloria go than I was, although I'm glad we've got him still working with us in Sacramento. And what I'm trying to do is just as much as I can do to halfway do what Todd did when he was chair of the South Bend. As you all well know, the RC3 has been going through a lot of discussion for the last year and a half or so about what our next iteration is going to be. And part of that, as you all well know, was due to some strong encouragement on the federal level to change the focus of the RC3 and the way it's set up, organized, and how oversight gets done. And the other, in my opinion, is just that it was that time. It was a time to move to the next level. The RC3 had been around for, what, 25 years or so. I'm looking at the historian back there, Pat.
Almost 20.
Almost 20. And since I've been around longer, I can remember how it got set up in other parts of the country and why the structure was the way it was back in the 90s, and prior to that, going all the way back to the Stuart B. McKinney Act in the late 80s. And my opinion is that the RC3 and its governance has done quite well over the last near 20 years. In fact, I think given the lack of formal structure and all the accomplishments that have occurred is a testimony, I think, not only to a lot of the individuals, many of whom are sitting in this room, who made it work quite well, but also a testament to the community and sense of teamwork and comradeship among the people here together to keep it working and keep it going. I can tell you that was not the case in all communities across this country. There were places where there was never a good sense of team play, and or where there was, but leadership aged out and the continuing team play did not continue. So I think that in looking at the revised structure here, what the governing board of the RCCC tried to do was to promote as much continuity as we could, but to make sure that the structure going forward is one that could deal with any of the opportunities or challenges that might occur. And we all did, I'm sure, note the election last month. So I think this is a timely thing to have happen here in San Diego. I had the good fortune to sit on the nominations committee, and that was the committee that had the responsibility for coordinating the development of the new structure. I came on that committee when the RC3 was reformed in the summer of 14, and then I took over as chair in the summer of 15 when the chairman moved away. And so I had the honor of being a part of that development process. And what we tried to do was to reach out to a lot of different voices and to create a structure where there was a lot of input and interplay. We created a merger task force. The merger task force had a number of conversations and meetings both with the community, with individuals. The merger task force then came to the nominations and governance committee, again, which I chaired, and Deacon Vargas vice chaired. We then presented recommendations to the full RC3 board in August. And basically, generally, the RC3 board accepted our recommendations. And those recommendations were that we would incorporate the RC3 formally into a 501c3. And that would allow us to do a lot of things. Number one, we would not have to have an implementing organization to do our work for us. We wouldn't have to work through the regional task force or the housing commission or the counties or other existing administrative bodies. If we're a corporate public body ourselves, then that makes it a lot simpler and easier. It also would allow the RC3 to absorb other programs and to look for other things to do. So to supplement and to build upon the funding that comes into us from the federal government, from HUD, that we then use to support homeless programs throughout the region, the city, and county. We incorporate, we make this better, stronger, more nimble, more durable, and will give us more options than we've got now. And the board accepted that. Then there was a corollary to that, and that's where Tom Thiessen and Dolores Diaz basically came up with a corollary idea that we accepted as well. And that is, why not merge RC3 and the regional task force into one body? And those of us in the governing board kind of sat back and figured, whoa, which I thought of that. Because instead of creating a new organization, what we would be able to do would be to take the RC3, get a better name. You know, you tell somebody, well, it's a regional continuum of care counseling. What is that? Regional task force on the homeless? Aha, what is that? That's like Nations Bank taking over Bank of America and taking that name. It's a good name. It's a good brand. And easy to understand. It also means that the function that the task force is already performing would be absorbed within the larger structure of the RC3 to be called after January, the Regional Task Force on the Homeless. And then we would have a programmatic basis to look for other opportunities in the local market. So that was a brilliant suggestion on top of what I think was a reasonable, considered decision and recommendation from the Governance Committee and the Merger Task Force, or rather from the Governance Committee back to the board. So where the RC3 stands right now is that we will be going to the regular continuum board meeting on the 15th, which is next Thursday, in the afternoon. And we will be presenting formally the merger to be voted upon. And we're going to, and it will include both, and the both will be basically merging the regional task force will merge into the regional continuum of care, with the regional continuum of care assuming the task force name. And brilliant idea, Tom. What we will look at then is that we're not going to vote that day. There are two things, in my experience, that makes for a good decision. Number one is you do the right thing. And number two is everybody knows you've done it. And that latter one that sometimes takes some time, it's a process. So what we're going to be doing next Thursday is presenting the merger to the RC3 board. We're going to indicate that the continuum of care, this is going to take a while to get used to this already. That the task force on the homeless board has already acted. You did that last week, as I understand. Good until the end of January. And then we're going to tell the members of that board, you got another bite of this apple, take a look at what we're doing here. If you've got any other suggestions or changes you want to make to it, we need to hear from you by December 31st, or forever hold your peace. Then that would give the merger task force, the executive committee time to deal with any last minute changes or additions so that we take the done deal final product to the RC3 board, January board meeting on January 9th. That's kind of where we are on that. I'm going to ask if there's anything Susan or Zeke and Jim want to add to that before we ask the question.
I think the only thing I'm going to add to it, at least from the county's perspective and from all of our perspective, is whether you're in Escondido, Oceanside, El Cajon, Chula Vista, or the city of San Diego, we have way too many people on the streets today. And so all of this bureaucratic, if you will, reorganization and governance board and everything else, it really is to give us the infrastructure so that we have the data, the information, and the support to do what we need to do to deal with the issue on the streets that everybody is talking about, and to help all of you do that. Because what we've been doing over the past 2 years is I see so many of you spending so much time doing committees for the RC3, going to meetings, and doing all the work of those committees. Having this structure in place really, I feel strongly, will give us the staff support through Regional Task Force to do a lot of that staff work and give us the reports, give us the data, give us the things that we need and that you all need every day with the people that you're working with. So I think in the long term, in the future, it's going to help us, all of these changes, just making things make sense organizationally for our entire region. So that's all I would add.
Yeah, if I made a couple of comments. I'm the service provider, you're represented on the executive committee. So I want you to feel that way and realize that, so that if there's anything that you need to voice, you can voice it yourself, obviously. And that's why this is an important meeting. We have our monthly meetings as well that we can attend. Susan alluded to the working groups. That's a good way to get involved so that you know firsthand what's going on and you can have your input. Because I want to make sure that your needs are considered, obviously, being a provider myself. You can always feel free to reach out to me personally as well. Rick alluded to changes in HUD that have been happening, and we all know them well, right? And some of them have required us to be adapting in a huge way, and so it's been a concern. for a number of providers, one of those villages included. And so the message I want to deliver is that I'd like you to get involved. I want your voices to be heard, and I want you to make sure you understand what's going on and the changes that are making, that the executive committee is considering, that the board is considering as well, so that if you have any concerns or any suggestions, that your voice be raised. And again, just to extend to you the opportunity to either contact me directly. I have Bill Bolstad and Julie Didi who are here and are involved in a number of committees. I think many of you know them. Feel free to reach out to them as well.
Now, one of the things that we're doing is this sort of a change is, I'll use the old overused metaphor, we're changing the engines on the plane to 30,000 feet. As Susan said, we got people who need services. We don't need to wait for all this merger to occur before we will help. So we are doing as we plan our change, and we'll continue doing as the change occurs. That's why we are making certain personnel decisions and adding staff that we made at the board meeting on the 15th of this month. That's why, assuming that the merger occurs, Dolores, and I'll point out, I think she's done a wonderful job with the task force on the homeless over the years, and she will be the interim CEO of the combined organization. We will, however, and this is no allusion to Dolores one way or the other, we will be doing a full market search, looking for whoever, either currently in-house or external, will be the head of the revised regional continuum. The regional task force on the homeless, after the merger occurs, that will be in process, but we're going to try to do all of this so that there is no slippage of service to the people that we're here to serve.
You have two organizations coming together with two mission statements. What will be the mission statement?
Well, as a clarification, the Regional Continuum of Care Council is not a organization. It does have a mission statement. There will be a combined mission statement and a combined mission statement that, as it stands right now, is the mission statement and vision of the Regional Task Force on the Homeless, which is to end homelessness in the San Diego region.
The advisory groups to the current RCCC, there's 5 of them. And then there's an additional one, the Opening Doors, that Greg Angel oversees. The short answer to your question is absolutely yes. So based on what your interest areas are and where your expertise is, the committees are nominations and selections, and they are more involved with nominating members of the board. And then there's the Data Advisory Committee, which is involved in, I know this will be a shock, but it's involved in data. And then working very closely with them is the Evaluation Advisory Committee, which is really looking at overall system standards and monitoring of the system. There's the Resource Development Committee that is about developing resources to support all of the things that we need our infrastructure organization to do and we need to do as a community. And then lastly, definitely not lastly, there's the Coordinated Assessment and Housing Placement Subcommittee or advisory group. And they're really tasked with working on that whole system, that CAP system, and making it happen well throughout the entire county. And so we have a lot of providers, particularly in the CAP one, but we have providers in all the various ones. And then we have the Opening Doors Committee as an ad hoc committee under Greg, and they were established to focus on the federal priorities around ending homelessness and have been very focused on the veterans issue, the chronic issue, and will be moving towards looking at assisting with the strategic plan for the entire county.
And is there somewhere that I can refer to see this going to
I think it's on the website.
It's docsandiego.org.
It's not much.
It's a very brief. One of the things that will be happening with once the new Regional Task Force on the Homeless is constituted with its new board, you will see a merger of the current Regional Task Force on the Homeless website that's pretty much HMIS and data information melded with the continuum of care. So it will be a complete revamp that'll have more comprehensive information. And that's one of the benefits of the merge. We will, if there's more operational efficiencies, you can go to one place, one hub for all the information on homelessness in the San Diego region.
So I know that...
Could you identify yourself,
Oh,
please?
yes. I'm Dennis Stein. I'm making a video on homelessness. And my goal is to really kind of help the conversation in the general public. And I know that more resources can, you all are doing a lot of work, and especially at the county and the city and the Housing Commission. And if you had more resources, that would be very helpful. Maybe if I could communicate to the general public and get some public push towards elected officials on this, what message would you have for them? What would you want the general public to advocate for? Or what role would the general public have in this?
Well, the biggest policy decision any unit of government ever makes is a budget. And that's probably true of businesses and individuals and families as well. And there is no substitute for resources. The difference between market housing and affordable housing is that, generally speaking, in market-based housing, the customer pays for the resource or pays for the end product. In affordable housing, somebody else provides a subsidy to help, assuming that the individual receiving the care cannot make an overrun. You translate that into the need for additional homelessness services. If there's anybody in need of help, it's the homeless. And so what I would submit, and this is getting off the subject a little bit, but bear with me. I think there are three issues that have converged in this part of the world that's making the homeless issue get worse and worse, despite the extra resources we're putting into it already. One is those of you who are professional practitioners know the mental health issue, which has a lot of people on the street untreated. Some of us are old enough to remember those big old state mental hospitals that don't exist any longer. Without that, and with the theory when they were done away with 30 years ago that there would be community care, sometimes that's happened, sometimes it hasn't. But I think mental health is a huge, and related substance abuse are huge. Second is the need for affordable housing. As I said a minute ago, help for people who cannot pay their own way in the marketplace, which includes homeless as well as non-homeless. If you look at any reasonable federal numbers over the past 20 years, the rate of increase in affordable housing has failed to keep up with the increase in the population. The third, and this is particularly acute in coastal California, is the whole issue of housing affordability. And I would differentiate housing affordability from affordable housing. Housing affordability is what affects all of us, unless you're wealthy. Probably not too many of them in this room. But if you're not wealthy, then we've all seen what happens when demand exceeds supply. Growth is limited, supply is limited. You get price pressures on the middle class. That pushes down onto the affordable housing level, which then pushes down to the lowest, to the affordable people on the streets. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out. What we're looking for is ways to mitigate that. And we need more supply, we need more development, more supply, but we also need additional resources to help people who can't pay their own way. And it's certainly the case with the homeless.
Sure. So with the county, we have an overall framework called Live Well San Diego that's based on 3 pillars: being healthy, safe, and thriving. And everybody recognizes you cannot be healthy, you cannot be safe, and you certainly aren't thriving if you don't have a roof over your head. And so to that end, 2 of our members of the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Cox and Roberts, came forward with Project One for All, which all of you are very familiar with, over this past year, committing the county to provide services to all those who are seriously mentally ill and homeless. And so we're in the process of ramping up those services. And I think the message is that Project One for All isn't a county thing, it's an us thing. because we need to help with the resources on housing navigation, resources on housing, as Rick said, unlocking the housing, getting the front doors to people. You can give them treatment services and you can give them lots of treatment services, but at night if they're on a concrete doorstep, it's not going to get you very far. So really for Project One for All to be effective, we really all have to do it together to really focus on the needs.
And I'll point out a couple of things here. The city itself is committed to this as well. You know, the Housing Commission in November of 2014 put out our Housing First San Diego notice of funding availability in the field. That's on our website. It had 5 components to it, including $30 million of investments in properties and 1,500 vouchers to attach to the need, in addition to some other in-house things. In December of 15 and January of 16, we expanded that to what we call Housing First San Diego 2.0, where we added a component with the Guardian Scholars at San Diego State, former foster kids, a component of the Monarch School, and the Housing Our Heroes program advocated by the mayor, where we're right now in the process of getting an additional 1,000 vets off the street over the next year. We'll have a Housing First 3.0 probably by beginning of our fiscal year begins next July. I'll point out the Housing Commission is putting more money into homelessness support than comes to this RC3 in the first place to the feds. We're all committed. We've all got resources going into this. We need more. I think to finish my long-winded comment here, back to your original question, the RC3 currently is getting about $16 million or so a year in funding from the federal government, which is spread out throughout the city and the county. That puts us at about the 23rd funding level among all the cities in the country. We have the 4th worst homeless county. So we've got the 4th worst problem, the 23rd highest level of funding that comes through the continuum of care. The reason for that is that the formula has not been changed since the 1970s. I know HUD is looking at a change now. They published a request for comments last summer. Congressman Peters in particular has been a bulldog dealing with this issue and pushing HUD to change the formula. And HUD's promised to respond. To answer your question, yes, we need more resources, and we don't have them now, hopefully more.
We have some more. Just to add to that point, 5 other communities in California have passed affordable and supportive housing bonds. So we see $1.2 billion in LA, $950 million in Santa Clara, $580 million in Alameda, Oakland, $100 million for affordable housing. San Mateo has a half-cent sales tax, and Santa Monica has $16 million. So that's something that we weren't able to pull off in San Diego to put an affordable housing bond on the ballot. But that many communities up and down the state have done that because the need for investment in affordable housing. So if we're looking for something new, I would say revisiting that question of investing in affordable housing and supportive housing at a higher level would be something that would make a significant difference. And also thanking Representative Peters for his work on the formula, which would also bring new resources to San Diego.
Any other questions from the full membership?
Yes, ma'am. With the increase in the number of homeless families that has been seen, that is what 55% was on the website, what are we thinking about in regard to, the housing families can be difficult. It takes time. We have the Housing First model that we're working with. But in the interim, what are we doing to get these families off the street, or what can we do? Is that something that is going to be thought about, talked about? It's very concerning.
From the Housing Commission standpoint, I'll talk about my agency as opposed to the RC3. We give priority to 4 categories of people for a voucher issue. We're currently operating just over 15,000 vouchers. Elderly, disabled, veterans homeless. So somebody homeless goes to the top of the list, along with those other categories. And we have 15,000 vouchers. I will point out to you, however, we got 70,000 families on the waiting list. So every time we decide to divert a voucher from one category to another, we're making a Sophie's choice of who gets it. So we've tried to make sure the Housing Commission that we do have opportunities for homeless, but we can't take our eye off the other issue as well. And one of the things we try to do too with our resources, both what we get through the RC3 and also our other federal resources, is to differentiate the problem area and the nature of the subsidy. We've got a large rapid rehousing program helping people who are not chronic, where we'll help them for a couple of years get stabilized and be on their own. And that's working pretty well. And that, we found fits a lot of the family characteristics.
As a community, need more of it. And a lot of what we've been doing and looking at is transitional housing, and is there transitional housing that can be converted into bridge or interim housing with a more connected system. So there's a lot of system sort of thinking that we're doing related to that interim piece.
Is we know that there's a federal strategic plan to end youth homelessness, to end family homelessness by 2020. You know, speaking directly to this, veterans homelessness, youth homelessness. So, you know, we have some challenges. There's no question about that. But I think that where we are today is we're getting on track and looking at all the strategies that we can employ, and just, you know, everyone putting in their piece of this puzzle so that we can really see the impact collectively. So with that, we've got other things on the agenda. I'd like to thank our executive committee for having joined us this morning. Thank you very much, Rick, Susan, and Vargas. And we encourage everyone to please participate in the various committees. We do need your presence there. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Committees for the inclement weather shelter program that is actually up and running, and the city of San Diego is actually activated, I think, 2 or 3 times already. However, the rest of the county, we're still looking for input from the rest of the county, and I think it kind of answers some of your questions. What do we do in the interim? Because we have done a great job of skedaddling a lot of people, contacting a lot of people, getting people into the system, only to tell them, you know, there's another month wait or another 2-month wait, so they have to sit on the corner and wait. And then the weather gets really bad, so there is opportunity to get some of these people off the street during inclement weather, which would give us another chance to actually go one-on-one with them at these shelters. But we need people to fill out what we call an Attachment E from the Regional Continuum of Care Winter Shelter Program. And you can get those forms, or if you want more information, the inclement weather coordinator is run through 211, and that's A.D. Roman.
Simon Ruff with Corporation for Supportive Housing. I'm a governance board member, and recently became the chair of the Nominations and Selections Committee. As Rick had mentioned, when he joined the executive, that opened up a new role on that committee. I do want to introduce my other committee members. It's a very glamorous committee that we sit on. A lot of interesting work. And so really the charge of the Nominations and Selections Committee is 2 things. One is to focus on the charter. That was a huge lift last year.
On the approval of the board selection policy.
Motion to approve as stated.
Do we have a second? Second from Member Hall, who joined today, correct?
You should have paid already.
Any discussion? Question? Okay, all those in favor, please signal with the right hand, please. Amanda will take the count. Yes. You can vote on one per agency. Items on the agenda, I'd like to ask Nancy Sasaki and Susan Bauer to come forward. They're going to give an informational update on our standards.
Yeah, sure. Okay, sure. We need a chance to talk about this beforehand. So I am Nancy Sasaki. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance Healthcare Foundation. I'm also the board liaison. I'm on the governing board, and I am the board liaison to the Evaluation Committee. And I'm still Susan Bauer. I'm tired of this voice. And in this role, I'm the chair of the Evaluations Committee. And so one of the requirements that the HARP Act has of all of the CLCs is to have written standards by which we measure our performance in the community. So what that has been given to the evaluation committee. So if y'all want to join us, it's really a lot of fun. Please, with scoring as well. But anyway, we are required to establish written standards, and we are in the process of doing that. Earlier this year, Nassar Consulting, they did a review of different standards and came up with a process for us to use. We've kind of followed a little bit of that process. We have also hired Romanian Institute to work with us to actually draft the standards. They've gone through a bunch of other standards from around the country and pulled out different areas that we thought would be really important for our standards to include. At our last meeting, I thought the really most interesting part of the conversation that we had was setting the tone. That in some of them they're very cut and dry, and these are, you know, X, Y, and Z you have to follow. But some of them also had a tone about what they wanted to represent in the community, how they wanted to treat individuals with respect, how we wanted to ensure that our system was a full system of care, that we were looking at all of the pieces and how it all fit together. So I think that's one of the ways that we want to start out the way our written standards are. Written for our particular community, and there will be a process for once we get to a draft, which we'll see later this week, I believe it is, or maybe next week. We'll see that draft, and then we do have a process for getting it out to you guys to get feedback on it. And I'm going to let Susan talk about
This part of it. So we've been working on a timeline and how to get this through, but also to get appropriate community input into it. And we did have a very large stakeholder input meeting. Were any of you at that meeting where we broke every fire code in the room? Once we figured out what room it was in? Yeah, thank you for being there. And that was an opportunity to get people's input around different types of housing and what the prioritizations may be within different types and what they may look like. So taking all that input that had TA received from you and coalescing it into something and combining it with all of those other standards from different parts of the country, setting the tone, as Nancy said. Our timeline is that we should be getting out, hopefully, this is our plan, is that we'll be getting the draft document out for feedback beginning in early January, January 4th to be specific. I don't know that I want to nail myself to that date, but yeah. But it'll be out in January for 3 weeks. So you'll have plenty of time to give us lots of input, and please do so. We'll post it on the website as we have in the past with evaluation activities. So send in stuff to us. Then we'll go in, look at it, take the input, consider it, revise things, everything else, and then send out another draft for input. We are also talking about potentially having more specific consumer forums with people who are homeless now. When head TA was here, we tried to do one in each region. Unfortunately, we only were successful in Central with people coming to it. So we had a lot of learnings on what not to do in the other parts of the county. But in Central, and thank you, Michael, for being the person at the door. But we had about 24 people that came and gave us excellent input about our system. And really some of the common themes that came out were the need for connectivity and case management and how do you access things. And I don't think that comes as a big surprise to anybody. So, so planning to do a little more of those feedback loops as well. Any questions? Y'all are really excited to see this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, you'll bear with me just a few more minutes. I promise to get you out of here before our appointed time. I wanted to take a few minutes to introduce you to your team, your coordinated assessment and housing placement team. And I'm trying to move away from using the term CAP to more coordinated entry system, which is what HUD calls it. And I want you to get to know some of these folks. It's headed up by a gentleman we've hired, thanks to the successful applications that many of you are working to get our region's first CAP planning grant. So we have hired a gentleman by the name of Chris Schilling. Chris isn't here now, he's at a meeting with the county on TOFA. But he started with us 2 months ago. He comes to us from ARC of San Diego. And he used to oversee programs that had their own coordinated entry systems. So the concepts and all of these things are transferable to this job. We also have Megan Dunn, who is also at that TOFA meeting. And she's been part of this community for approximately 2 years. She started when 25 cities started. But new to our team, and I asked them all to be here because I want you to connect the name and the face. Brian Gruters. Brian, will you stand up so everybody can see you? He's been with the RTFH for a month. He's comes to us from mental health systems, where he was the housing manager and formerly a member of the CAP advisory committee. Dylan, you want to stand up? Dylan is one of the community coordinators. He started with the regional task force on the homeless a week ago, so he's so new. He has an extensive background in affordable housing, HUD programs. He was a housing director on reservations and tribal lands, so he's got an interesting background. Tina Camera, she's one of our housing navigators. She started with the RTFH 3 weeks ago. And she most recently was a homeless outreach worker and housing navigator for ECS, for Episcopal Community Services, in the Friend to Friend program. So people don't throw rocks at me for having taken some great staff. Tasha Petty. Tasha started with the RTFH 3 weeks ago in her capacity as a housing navigator. She most recently worked with PAP, and where she was a case manager after spending 14 years with ECS. So this lady knows this population. Thank you and welcome. We have Valentina Heather. She's a housing navigator. She started with the RTFH 3 weeks ago. She comes to us from the state of Hawaii, so aloha, where she was working as a housing navigator in their Next Step shelter. So she comes to us with some direct experience here. Cynthia, where's Cynthia? Cynthia Garza, she started with us 3 weeks ago as well. She was with Family Health Centers of San Diego as a peer support specialist with their healthcare and homeless program. Brandon Torres is a matcher, full-time matcher. He started with the RTFH 3 weeks ago as well. He was previously a program coordinator and service navigator for the LGBT Community Center. So please join me in welcoming them. So I wanted you to visually see what we're thinking of at this point. What they're working on right now, they're gelling as a team, and they're the phase 1 of what the board wanted, Coordinated Entry System San Diego, to focus on the COC funded programs. So they're going through the system, they're looking and verifying that the resources are in the system, and doing a number of things to get us on track. And what we're thinking is the team for North County would be the community coordinator, Dylan Dobson, with Valentina Heather as the housing navigator, and matcher Brandon Torres. Central, Brian, Tasha Petty as a housing navigator, and we put 2, we're assigning 2 there. Tina Camera as a housing navigator as well, and Brandon as the matcher. We also have Victoria Newman, by the way, who is a part-time matcher, and we just love her. She came to us from Veterans Community Services. I knew somebody would throw a rock.
She's volunteering with us now.
Community coordinator for East and South County and for all of our veteran activities is Megan Dunn. She's our most seasoned person. Housing navigator Cynthia Garza, and matcher. A word about housing navigation. that is an area that we need to talk about as a community, because we need to look at highest and best use of those 4 housing navigators. We would like to fill in the gaps where there isn't housing navigation already existing in the community. So more to come on that. Yes, there's a question.
Could you talk a little bit about what is the difference between a navigator and a matcher?
Does someone from the, you want to take that? I'll let the team answer that.
So navigators prepare people to be matched.
Okay, so the navigator is working on getting like documentation things and stuff like that, and then the matcher is connecting them to the actual housing program.
Another way to think about it is that the navigators work in the field, the matcher will be working more or less behind a computer coordinating this.
Any other questions on that? You're going to hear more from this team. They are preparing a newsletter that you will see periodically, and they will be rolling their sleeves up. Those community coordinators will be out there in the community talking to you and moving people through the system. Any other questions? Just kind of, yes. Oh, do it. Do it.
I'm Julie. I'm the co-chair of the CAP Advisory Committee, and just want the staff, I'm told, will be at our next meeting, which is the 3rd Wednesday of every month, and we meet at Alpha Square, which is on the corner of 14th and Market in downtown San Diego, 1:30 to 3. So please come to those meetings. It's a great opportunity to be involved and hear about CAP. As everybody knows, it's so central to everything that we're doing, especially as providers. And there's a lot of work still to be done, and I'm so happy that we have all this staff. Lots of forward movement with having the staff in place. So please come to those meetings so you can help make decisions about how CAP works.
We have another person that raised.
Just a quick clarification, so if agencies are serving chronic or veterans, those are their points of contact regardless of where they are in the county?
Yes, chronic and veterans it is region-wide. It is a region-wide assignment. So more to come. The next item on the agenda is, I'm going to kind of just take my 5 minutes, and it was about the merger update that you heard from Rick, from the perspective of the continuum of care and what is going to be happening when. January is going to be a big meeting where all the formalities and legalities take place. But I do want to take 5 minutes to share with you from the merger perspective from the current regional task force on the homeless. We have, I see 3 of the board members from the current regional task force and the homeless are in this room. And I wanted to give this community a heartfelt thank you. Because in 2000, the regional task force started in 1984 by then Mayor Roger Hedgecock. He put together a task force of city and county stakeholders to take a look at the problem of homelessness downtown. And then they said, well, you know, this is really a regional problem. We need to get the county involved. And it morphed over time. And it became. The Regional Task Force on the Homeless eventually became a 501c3 approximately in 2004. And the service provider community were the ones that were the board for the most part. They created this organization to support the continuum of care. Well, you know, and it was about HUD reporting. No one ever dreamed or imagined what would be happening years into the future. But in 2009, it ran into a hiccup. It needed money. It was on the brink of bankruptcy. And board members and community stakeholders, and I'm looking at Pat, thank you, Pat, and Lauren Paz, who's another one who's no longer with us, they stepped in, and other members that are in this room said, we want to help, we want to save the task force. And they did, and they nursed it back to a healthy, thriving nonprofit organization. And because of that, we've been able to grow and become the organization that we're now poised to be the infrastructure and the hub for the continuum of care. So I wanted to thank you for for, you know, believing in it, even when it was having a difficult time. But at the end of the day, it's an organization we can be proud of. We've got a long way to go. The task force board on Monday had their meeting. It was in this room. They had it was a bittersweet celebration of where we were. We had data in so many different places. There were many, many challenges, but yet we come out of the ashes and we're poised to really do some great things, expanded things to serve this community. And as Susan mentioned during the talk here, she said, you know, this bureaucratic stuff, you know, we just have to get it done and get it past us, because at the end of the day, well, the reason why we exist, we want ourselves out of business. We want to take care of this issue of homelessness, but you know, the infrastructure is a big deal right now, and we need it. And I just wanted to thank you, because this group, you know, stuck it out. You put hundreds and thousands of hours of work into being the regional continuum of care, the RCCC, for many, many years. And now, you know, it's taken shape, it's grown up, and we're about ready, like I did with my kids, and say, okay, time to go forth and do. So that's where we are, and I wanted to take my 5 minutes to thank you about that. So next steps. This group, this membership group, according to charter, should be meeting a minimum of twice per year. Minimum. Okay. We are going to have a special meeting in January to elect your North County Coastal position that's going to go on the board, and to ratify the process for the election of the elected people that are going to be sitting on the board. So be on the lookout for emails from Amanda Patterson. Be on the lookout. We will keep you posted on how we're doing with this merge. Please know that we are also looking at the kinds of forums that are to bring service providers in for input on standards, for learning through learning collaboratives, and training. More to come in 2017. So to be determined. Know that we're meeting again in January to talk about the people that are going to be representing you from North County Coastal and be elected on the board. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
It's a lot of information. The lady's name up there who called me, a housing navigator, was Tasha Perry, but she left. I saw her. I was going to introduce myself to her, but I don't know her. She went away quick. Seems like a lot of good, well-intentioned, and a lot of planning. And like they said, it's a developing of the infrastructure of this problem, and so it's going to take time. But a lot of good ideas, a lot of things actually starting to happen, but it's like my do list, you know, they haven't actually happened. They haven't, I mean, tonight I go back and I'm on the sidewalk, and I've been there for 4 years. Yeah, you know. Roger Hitchcock, and when he was the mayor, and he started this group to look at homelessness, and then that changed into another kind of group, and you know, it's still around. Waiter, I was a waiter, tuna fisherman. My earlier years. I'm 58, so when I was 26, I guess I tuna fish.